There's a decision a lot of people in Raleigh are wrestling with right now, and it's one that's harder than it used to be. Should you buy an existing home or should you build a new one? 10 years ago, this was often a lifestyle question. You built because you wanted something specific that you could not find in the market, or you bought because building felt like more than you wanted to take on. But that math kind of started to shift. The Raleigh market's changed enough that this decision is no longer just about preference, it's about real trade-offs that affect your money, your timeline, and what you actually end up with. So I want to talk through how to think about this honestly, because I've had this conversation with a lot of people over the last couple of years, and the answer isn't the same for everyone. So here's what I want to cover. First, I want to talk about what the market actually looks like right now for buyers, because dynamics have definitely shifted and that does matter. Then I want to talk through the real case for buying an existing home and where that path makes sense, and then walk through the real case for building custom and where that path makes sense. After that, I want to get into the honest trade-offs, the things people don't always weigh carefully, and toward the end, I'll talk about how to make this decision based on your actual situation, rather than what someone else's decision looked like or what else someone else is trying to sell you on. So let me start with the market. Raleigh has grown significantly, and the existing home market reflects that. Prices inside the Beltline average over $1.3 million now, and even in outer suburbs, the prices have moved up meaningfully over the last 5 years. Inventory has been tight for a while, though it's loosened in certain segments, but new construction inventory, meaning homes that the builder started speccing and selling, has been increasingly common in growth markets like Wake Forest, Holly Springs, and Apex. Custom builds, meaning homes built to your specifications on a lot that you or your builder have secured, remain their own separate market with their own dynamic and their own timelines. What that means for a buyer is that there's more choice than there was 2 or 3 years ago, but the choice is complicated. You can buy an existing home, new or older. You can buy a spec home the builder's finishing brand new, or you can build completely custom. Each path has a different economic outcome, a different timeline, and a different overall outcome for you. Let me walk through the case for buying an existing home first, because this is often the right answer and people don't always recognize it. When you buy existing, you know exactly what you're getting. You've walked through the house, you've seen the finishes, you know the yard. There's no imagination required. You know what the closing timeline is, which is typically 30 to 60 days from contract to keys. You avoid the entire construction process with its schedule risk, decision fatigue, and financing complexity. And in some price range, particularly in established neighborhoods, you can get more house, meaning more square footage, for the money you buy existing than you can buy building, especially if you're willing to invest in some updates over time. There's also a value case for buying older homes in established neighborhoods. In many parts of Raleigh, particularly this inside the Beltline market, older homes on desirable lots have appreciated more than new construction because the lots themselves are the scarce resource. So buying a solid older home in a great neighborhood can be a strong long-term investment, and it can be better than building new in a less established area. The trade-off is that you're going to accept the layout, the systems, and the finishes of a house that was built for someone else's needs, which is where a lot of people run into that friction 2 or 3 years in, especially those that don't want to move in and then renovate. So let me talk through the case for building custom. The clearest case is when you have specific requirements that the existing market just does not serve. Maybe you need a specific floor plan for aging parents or family circumstances, a certain size, certain number of bedrooms. Maybe you just have a specific aesthetic you want and you cannot find it in the existing inventory. Maybe you want particular systems, energy efficiency levels, or the construction quality that the older housing stock in your target neighborhoods just doesn't have and can't provide. In those situations, custom building is the answer because the market cannot deliver exactly what you're looking for. The second case is when the total cost of buying existing plus renovating to what you want approaches or exceeds the cost of building custom on a comparable lot. This happens more than people expect, and it's often hard to find the answer, so people don't even go down this route, particularly in the mid to high end of the market. If you're looking at a $2 million existing home that needs $700,000 of renovation to become what you want, you're at 2.7 with a renovated older home, where building custom on a good lot at a similar total might get you a new home with new systems, a custom design, and absolutely no compromises for the same amount of money. When renovation math starts looking like custom construction math, custom construction becomes the better answer. The third case is when you already own the land or you have access to a specific lot that's not available in the market. That changes the math significantly because your land basis may be much lower than someone starting from scratch or having to buy it off someone else. And you have more flexibility on how to spend that construction budget. Here are the honest trade-offs that don't always get weighed carefully. On the buying side, the biggest trade-off is compromise. You are almost always accepting some things you don't love in exchange for certainty and speed of purchase. The kitchen may be laid out in a way you change, the primary suite might be on the wrong side of the house, the systems might be older than what you really want in a perfect world. You can renovate to fix some of it, but every renovation is a project, and every project has a cost and disruption to you, your family, your spouse. Some buyers make peace with that. Others just end up frustrated in a couple of years because they never really loved the house they were in. You saw this a lot during COVID. On the building side, the biggest trade-off is time and management. Building custom in Raleigh right now is typically an 18 to 24 month project from serious design conversations to move in, and that's if you're with a good builder who can hit that timeline. That's a long time to be planning around, especially if you're selling an existing home to fund your build, or you don't want to move into a rental, or you just don't have the money to do everything that you want in the timeline you want. It's a lot of decisions. And it's a lot of coordination. It's a lot of trust in your builder and your team over a long period that they can execute in the timeline they say, because let's be honest, in the building community, that's kind of rare and it's kind of sad. Some people can find this process energizing. Others, and the majority that I talk to, find it exhausting. Being honest with yourself about which type you are matters more than people admit, and also understanding that if you're a person that might find it exhausting, the benefit outweighs that exhaustion that you might feel over 15 to 24 months. There's also the cost predictability trade-off. When you buy existing, you know the total cost of closing. When you build, yeah, you have contract prices, but you also have change orders, allowance overages, and the general reality that most custom builds cost somewhat more than the initial contract by the time everything is done. Because in custom, you can pick whatever you want. You see everything. And if we're being really honest with ourselves, when you get to see everything, you don't like to tell yourself no. Trust me, I've been there. If certainty about total cost is really important to you, then buying existing favors that. Building requires more comfort with a range and knowing that you have to have extra capital set aside that you're okay and comfortable spending to get what you want. There's also the market risk trade-off. When you buy existing, you own that asset today. When you build, you're committing to a project that won't be complete for 12 to 24 months. Now, market conditions change during that time, and that can either be in your favor, where we've had clients make $1 million in the build, thank you COVID. We've also had moments where in the past, before I was in building, where the market went down when you built and you did not make money building. Interest rates, the economy, they all move this. Your own financial situation can change, your job can change, things that you cannot control sometimes do change. While most of these risks are manageable, they are real and they don't exist to the same degree when you're buying something that already exists. So here's how I'd think about making a decision in your specific situation. Ask yourself first, what is it that you actually need? What do you really need, not what you want? Not what would be nice, not what would be cool, but what you need for your family, your life, and how you plan to use the house for the next 10 to 15 years. Also be honest to yourself, are you gonna live in a house for 10 to 15 years? Most people are living in houses for 5 to 7 years. That's new with our generation, but it's true. Not like my parents who've been in the house for 37 years. People aren't living in houses that long, so be honest with yourself. So if an existing house can meet the needs at a reasonable cost, that's often the better answer because the friction of building is real and it's not worth it for someone whose needs could be met simply by buying. Also ask yourself, how comfortable are you with a long project? If you know yourself, you know that a 24-month project with hundreds of decisions is gonna make you miserable, that is important information to know. Custom building is an incredible outcome for people who enjoy the process and they know exactly what they want and the market cannot address it. But it can be a punishing outcome for people who don't. So ask yourself third, what your budget actually supports. Look honestly at the math. Compare the total cost of buying existing plus any renovations you like to do against the total cost of building custom, including the land, the construction, and the soft costs. This is where a very good agent can actually be very beneficial here to help you because they're experts in their market. So that's why I say trust them, especially the good ones. If the numbers are close and you've brought on other advisors, the non-financial factors are what's going to tip this decision. If one is significantly cheaper than the other for what you actually want, that's a very strong signal. Don't ignore it. And ask yourself fourth what the resale story looks like in 10 years. This is where the neighborhood decision matters as much as the house. A great house in a marginal neighborhood tends to underperform. A merely good house in a great neighborhood will hold its value and depreciate over time. In either the buy or build path, the neighborhood you land in matters as much as the house itself. If you're the first one in a neighborhood building custom, you have a very good chance of having high appreciation. Or if you're buying in a very good market that you see going up over time. North Hills and Raleigh is a great example. You bought 5 years ago, you very easily could 50, 100% X your money. The bigger principle underneath all of this though, is that it isn't a market where one answer fits everyone. Some people should build, some people should buy. And some should buy and renovate. The right answer depends on your situation, your priorities, and your honest assessment of what you can tolerate and what you can actually afford. The mistake I see is people who make decisions based entirely on someone else's story. Their friends built and they loved it, so they think that they should build, or they think they need to keep up with their friends who built custom. Or someone who on the opposite of the spectrum, their coworker had a terrible experience, so they don't even want to explore that route. These data points are almost meaningless for your specific situation. What actually matters is what you actually need and what makes sense for you, your life, and your money. The fundamentals here don't change with the market. Know what you actually need and understand the honest trade-offs. Do the math for both paths. Weigh the non-financial factors seriously, write them out, make a structured chart if that's what works for you. And make this decision based on your own situation, not someone else's. Do that and you're gonna end up in the right house, whether you built it or you bought it. Skip it and you can end up in a situation that looked right on paper, but doesn't actually fit your life. Or you're an emotional buyer and you might have done something that you regret. So if this was helpful, I'd appreciate a like and subscribe. If you're working through this decision and you've got a specific question about your situation, drop it in the comments. I'd be happy to do my best to help you answer it.